The views and opinions expressed during Love and Life with Lana and Dave are those only of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or the position of our podcast hosts or affiliates. Any content provided is not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. All right, let's do it.
You're listening to Love and Life with Lana and Dave, the podcast where logic is power and you take control. Thank you for tuning in and making the choice to listen in and get ideas for your own love and life. Now, here are your hosts, Lana Williams and David Vaccaro.
So it's 9:30 in the morning on a Saturday. I'm rolling around in bed, sleeping in a little bit, and my phone rings. It's Will again. And he's listened to another song that he can't quite figure out the meaning of. So he says to me, I have an issue with James Brown. And he starts running off some of the lyrics to me. Another one of our infamous conversations has begun. We often analyze songs, and I think it's great because when we worked together almost 30 years ago, Will really worked with more of the newer music. The theme of the room he worked in was new. And at the time, I, on the other hand, was working with old school music, and I really have been since old school times. So I get a kick out of listening to him pick up on a lot of the stuff that I've been playing for years. And that's a lot of the 60s and 70s and a lot of the stuff that's been sampled. He's in his shop again in the morning, getting orders out, putting stuff together and listening to an old school streaming station. So I get to relive all of the music I've played for years through his perspective. And I find that pretty funny and interesting. This is the friendship that we have, Will and I. This is been going on and off since we worked together back in 1997, but it never changes, even if we lose touch. These conversations can start off innocent over one topic and go on for like hours. There's very few friends that I have like this. I do have some friends that I talk to for hours and hours, but there's very few, and Will is one of them. This podcast is all about Will and his life and our friendship. I have a few friends who have lived several different lives, as I call it, which I think is pretty cool. I believe that he's got a lot to offer anybody who's listening about friendship, work ethic, life lessons, being a parent, and just enjoying life. So without further ado, here's my interview with my friend, Will Kidd. Take it away. So, basically, I just wanted to just have a long conversation with you about like your life, dude, because we had this talk. I don't know how many talks we've had in the past couple of weeks, but some real long, arduous fucking conversations. And one of them, I was just like, if you've had like 12 lives, to me, that's interesting, right? I like to hear about people who have like all different phases of life, and they're not just like doing one thing, but they jump on all over the place. So to me, you're somebody who's done that. You kind of started over here, then you did this, then you did that. And a lot of your stuff, to me, some of it goes together, but not really all of it. A lot of it's centered around music, which makes sense. But
somewhat, yeah, a little bit.
Right. And that's cool, right? You were always into music, and that's, I figured the beginning of this conversation is just going to be us shooting the shit about, I guess, the beginning of our friendship. And I want you to tell me, because I can't remember. Do you remember like what? I know it was 1997 when I first met you.
Yeah.
But I don't know when that bar and club and all that. You're going to know more than I do about like what time of year that was, because he was renovating the place or whatever. And he had put in the room you're in, and the room I was in, I think, was still getting tweaked. So when was that?
No, I never knew did you ever work for before?
I didn't. Nope. That's when I came.
Okay.
I came straight in. He brought me in for that room, and you probably had been there for, I don't know how long already.
No.
So,
the first time I met you was the first time you walked in the back door.
But was that the same day that you first started? Because I didn't know.
It was the same night, yeah, because it was the grand opening weekend. I think it was either a Friday or Saturday night.
Okay.
Then you walked in the back door, and I was talking to one of the bouncers because I was getting used to like the whole New England thing. And he's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, Will, you got a rubber?" And I go, "What? Do I have a what? I've never been asked for a condom before." He goes, "No, a rubber and elastic." And I go, "Oh, what? Oh,
Yeah.
a rubber band. Yeah, I got to put my hair back. Do you have an elastic?" I'm like,
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Well, you said
Here
put my
you
hair
go.
back, so I know who that was.
Right.
Yeah, so that's funny because I thought they were asking you if you had a condom, and it's like,
Right.
you know, in that
That's what I
club,
thought too.
in that club, that wouldn't have been very far fetched to say to you.
No, it wouldn't have been.
almost
I'm
immediately.
surprised they didn't have them like taped up to the front. You know how like
Yeah.
you go into a coffee shop and you
Well-
pay for your coffee. I want 2 coffees, but I want 3 hanging. You know what I mean? So
Yes. Oh my
so for
God.
people who can't afford like, you know, a coffee and they go, "And do you have a coffee? I got 3 hanging." You go ahead and take one. You know?
Without mentioning any names, there was some shenanigans that were down in that bar and club, let me tell you. And there were condoms I saw, but they were usually at the end of the night.
Yep.
They were usually in the corner somewhere.
In the corner or in the walk-in cooler.
Yep, needing to be swept out. Gross.
Nasty.
Yes, but
So yeah, the very first time I met you was your very first night, which was actually, you know, the very first official night. I think the night before on the Thursday had like a soft opening where he invited like his friends and stuff, and he just had
okay.
side open, you know.
Okay.
And it wasn't really me so much DJing, it's just making sure there was music going, you know. So I was like putting in mixed CDs.
But you had been around him like enough that you kind of
about a week or two.
Yeah,
I think I came in about 2 weeks before the opening because I was helping to finish up the DJ booth and everything.
Okay.
But yeah, the first night I met you, and we didn't really meet. You just kind of walked in, and I was like, "Hey," and you're like, "Hey," and that was it.
Yeah. So I was in what I call, I don't know if you're the same way as me about this. I'm like wicked in like a zone when I'm working. So
up to a certain point, yeah. As soon as I get the vibe of the room, then it's kind of like, no holds barred. Like shots start flowing and the music start getting crazier. But yeah, I get you.
Yeah, like especially when I'm walking into a new place, like I'm just like focused, and so I probably said hi enough to be acknowledging somebody that talked to me, and then just was like. And I don't know. I feel like I was in that room that I went into. I feel like I went in there once too on a different night, but I don't remember. Because there was a guy by the name of there. Well, again, I'm not going to go into names, right? So I do that. So then I drop a name. But
you can always edit that. You can always edit that part out to make it go rah.
That's true. That's true. Well, because we're talking about our life and the stuff that we've seen and the stuff that we've heard. We probably don't want to like drop a lot of names because it'll cause some scandal probably if we mention certain people and certain things that happen. But so that was the first night, and to me, I always walk into a place and I always feel like everybody's there and they're all familiar, and I'm like the odd one out. I guess I just always feel like that, so that's why I always think like you were always that everybody was there before way before me, and plus I swapped out with somebody else because I came from another DJ business, and I swapped out with somebody who was working to go in where I was leaving. So between me and this other guy, we kind of did like a swap over. So I just felt like I was the.
So you felt like everybody was like kind of staring at you when you walk in, like, "Hey, who's the new person?"
Yeah, or just like like everybody was just all like already situated.
I gotcha. Yeah, I know.
I think that's like, just in my head. That's usually that's just the way I feel about my thing. But anyway,
I had it a little bit easier because I got to know the place because I was there for a couple of weeks, like in and out of the building, and you know, just getting a feel for the place. And the customers are just, you know, the people coming and drinking. It's like it's all new to them too. So
that part I don't really care about. It's more like the staff, I guess.
Right.
And then I had never. I don't think. Yeah, that was the first night. I don't think I did start working in Cranston at the other bar, but I didn't think I started till after I was downtown for a little bit. So, and that made sense, you know, hey, you're already working this place, so we need DJs over there. Yeah, sure. A couple nights a week. So yeah. But
it's a little extra spending.
But do you remember like what month that was? Was that like the beginning of the year?
It was winter. I remember that because it was cold. It hadn't really started snowing yet, but it was really close.
But it was, so was it winter like towards the end of that year, or was it winter at the beginning of that year? Was it like January, or was it like the holidays? I can't remember.
I'm trying to think because
it was definitely 97, but other than that, I don't know if it was the end of 97.
I think it was the beginning because I only stayed there for about a year because he only kept that place open. Well, the rumors about him, selling to, for the fire safety station,
Mm-hmm.
it was less than a year, and those rumors started going around, and that's when I decided that I didn't want to wait for the axe to drop because I know how it is in the nightclub industry.
Yep. Better be a step ahead of it.
They could be saying everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Next thing you know, the place is padlocked.
Yeah.
With the sign
you show up and there's like
and you're out. So I'm like, I didn't wait for that to happen. So I was there roughly about a year, and then I told him that's exactly why I was leaving. Yeah. Well, I understand you got this place up for sale. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to invest a lot of time and a lot of effort putting roots down in this community if less than a year from now, I'm going to be at the door.
Right.
Because this is what I do, and I don't see a whole bunch of other nightclubs around, hiring for what he was paying me back then.
What did he say at that time? Like, okay, or did he try to talk to you?
He was just like, he was disappointed, but he understood. I had a family at the time. I had a wife and a like 5-year-old child to take care of, or less than that actually.
Yeah.
So I had shit to take care of. So I'm just it didn't really matter what he said.
Right.
I already had something else lined up.
Right.
Before I even left.
Wow.
So,
well, in that year, so I should probably introduce Will. Do you want to be called Will or William or?
Whatever. I don't care.
You're like me. Fine. It's like, whatever. Just don't call me late for dinner. So I guess this would have been the DJ name I learned of him as Squid. This is how, and
that was so long ago.
No, I know, but was that, my question is, I'm going to ask you another question. Was that something that was just where everywhere you went, you use that same name, right? So even in Florida, or did you just use it in that club?
I used it when I worked for Big Kahuna, which was in the early 90s.
Okay.
Early to mid 90s.
Okay.
And it came from me when I used to run track and field.
Oh, see? Here's more stuff I didn't know about.
Yeah. My last name is Kid.
Yeah.
And back then everybody used to call me Billy, so they called me Billy the Kid. And then when I used to run track and field, I used to run middle distance. But I came from a long distance type background. So I'd run cross country. So middle distance to me, I was like basically almost sprinting the whole way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They'd be like, man, that guy runs so fast, it looks like he's got 8 legs. And so they started calling me Billy the Squid.
Now, see?
And then from there, it just kind of went to Squid. And then I just kind of used that. And I dropped that after I left.
Yeah. Because you end up being DJ Will K. Now I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep, and so I was like, oh, it just dawned on me that I thought maybe for some reason you used it. Because where we worked was kind of like a Jimmy Buffett kind of experience, or at least most of the area that you were in was like
the bubble pillars with the fake plastic goldfish.
Yeah, so it was like, I don't want to say nautical, but it was like, that's the theme that you had. It was like fish.
Well, you expect to see Mr. Krabs to pop up at any time over in Club Splash.
Oh, yeah, well, they were, but I don't know if
you would.
I don't know which type of crab we're talking about.
I know where you're going.
Yeah,
with
I'm stopping. So
that goes back to the old stories we were just talking about at the condoms in the walk-in course.
Yes. So Will and I probably at least a year. We both were DJs, so obviously we started hanging out, talking, whatever. I think the first night that I came in, it was like early. It was always like 8:00 was always like, we were just sitting around. Willie wasn't busy until like 10 sometimes.
Right.
So I set up and did everything I had to do. I threw in one of my typical 45-minute mixes on CD or whatever, and then got my cup of coffee because I used to come in with a thermos all the time. It was a big thing. Love my coffee, right? Drinking my coffee right now. So I think I came over, sat down, and then we just started shooting a shit. And then I don't know how much I was asking you, but we started talking, and we got along pretty well. And then we just became really good friends. And We just both had a blast until you left. That's the story of that. And then we've been friends for years, on and off, because there's times that we've kind of lost touch for a while and whatever.
Right.
And then recently, he's just been sending me texts about some song he heard and how he's going to pull it apart because he didn't like something in it or whatever, which is cool.
Right. I listen to the old school funk stations a lot lately, and I was like, oh, that's where they got that sample from.
Yes.
That's like 1974.
Yes.
You know,
That's,
and I'd be like, what are you talking about? That's not, that's cool. That's from the Beyonce song, you know, and I'll be like, oh my God, that's where she got it from.
Yes.
You know,
like, it is funny because if you go to,
and then I heard, what is it? Addictive by Truth Hurts. And I was like, oh, and I heard the original track where they got it from. They basically just lifted the whole track and just sang over it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
yeah, it's not crazy.
Disappointed.
I know.
Because I was like, I really like that. I really like that song.
Right.
You know, by Truth Hurts. And then I heard the original and I was like, oh man.
Well, so, you know, there was a point in time, right, in history, I think up until, so I always use Good Times and Rapper's Delight, right? Because they literally were almost out at the same time.
Right.
Because at one point, music years ago, and this is, you know, fun music. I'd already done a podcast on music, so I'm not going to go too crazy about it. But there was a point in time where you couldn't, they stopped you being able to sample stuff for like a certain amount of time. I think it was like a 20-year, what do you call it? Like what do you want to call it? Like a copyright of 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, they started that, I think, back in the early 80s, really, when, you know, it used to be like a 6-second rule.
Yeah, well, no, with this, what happened was, see, in the early 90s, there was all that weird music that had a lot of like jazz and swing under it. Right. And the reason that was the case was because once, I think it was towards the late, what'd you say?
Like Diggable Planets?
Yeah, I always look at Lucas with the Lid Off, which is probably a song that
I love that.
For whatever reason, I love that song. It's a kind of a one-hit wonder, but it's got it's literally got like Glenn Miller under it and stuff like that. Like this stuff from the 20s and 30s started to become big underneath these songs in the like early to mid 90s. The reason that happened is because I think towards the late 80s they stopped people from being able to sample anything after a certain amount of time. They had to wait for that song's copyright to like run out. But in 1979 or 1978 even, when did Good Times come out? 1978, this is Nile Rodgers. So that's like, I think it was 1978 that the Chic album came out, right? And so Rapper's Delight came out in 1980, and technically that sample was so new. Like you used to be able to just rap over anything at that time because there were no like copyright laws for music that was fairly new. So back then there were all these songs that people were rapping over. A lot of the raps in the early 80s are specifically raps over some kind of R&B tune that was just about on the charts, if not still hot. And that makes sense because of course you would want somebody to be like hearing a familiar beat and getting interested in the song because of that. But at some point, a lot of the artists and probably the record companies too got involved and said, yeah, you can't do that anymore. You can't, you're going to have to.
June 4th, 1979, by the way.
Okay. So there you go. The Chic album. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, that like Rapper's Delight was literally like a year later. It might have even been a couple of months later because I think it was released in 1979. I think it became big in 1980. And Will's looking it up. It's like me.
1979, same year.
Yep. So they were able to just take that song, rap over it, re-release it. And that was Sylvia Robinson, by the way. There's a whole story about Sylvia Robinson.
I was just going to say how she was just one of those early woman pioneers who just had her finger on everything.
She was a mogul.
She was phenomenal. She was a music mogul.
Yes.
Everybody knew who she was and everybody wanted to work with her.
And Sylvia Robinson is the one who pretty much discovered Sugar Hill Gang. Now, Sugar Hill Gang.
Oh yeah,
what she did.
Put those guys on the charts.
What she did was commercialize stuff that had been going on in New York since like 1973, right? So you'll hear from a lot of rappers if you watch all these old documentaries of how pissed off they were that there's somebody was like charting with doing stuff that like they made public or they made popular in like the trenches of New York. And these dudes were from New Jersey. Long story, but anyway. If you ever watch, and I'm only going to say this because if you're probably younger than 40 years old, you're not going to know anything. But if you ever watch Dirty Dancing and you see that whole song, Love is Strange.
Yep.
There's a song, the lyrics are, it's Sylvia and Mickey. That Sylvia is Sylvia Robinson. And she was, I'm trying to remember her last name. Her last name is different. She changed it to Robinson. I don't know if she got married or what the case may be, but her name is a different name on that particular track that I think begins with a V. That's as far as I can go before my coffee runs out. But it's Vander, I can't remember, but it's her first, her name was Sylvia, last name V at that time. This would have been 1963. 62, 63, 64, somewhere around there. That's the soundtrack and the time frame of Dirty Dancing. And that song where her and Patrick Swayze are doing their thing in the dance studio. Vanderpool. That's actually Sylvia, which you would never really think about or know unless you were like in the business. So that was one of her first hits. She did another song called Pillow Talk and some other stuff like that. But she became a record. She built a record company and became a mogul. Like she's one of the first people. There's a couple of people in life that I kind of idolize, and she's like one of those people because she got so involved in everything. And so at her time, when you think about what she was doing, it was just like unheard of in the business. It just really was. So anyway, this is nothing to do.
You know, first of all, she's a woman. Mm-hmm. It's the 50s.
Well, I don't know about the 50s.
60s.
60s, maybe.
Yeah, well, 50s is when she started recording with Columbia.
Right.
1950. And she was only about 14 or 15 years old then. So, yeah, I guess it would have been late 50s, early 60s. First of all, she was a woman. Secondly, she was a woman of color. Right. So it was not even on anybody's radar. And all of a sudden, she's just there and she's larger than life. And she's like, deal with it. Right. That's what I love about her. Yes. She's just like up in your grill and she's just like, I'm successful. Yep. Anyway, yeah, we could go on for hours.
Yes, we could. So this is what happens with Will and I. We just start talking and it just goes like, I digress.
Right. So it's like dropping a bowling ball on a thin sheet of ice. It's like the bowling ball is our main idea.
Yes.
And all those little cracks all over the place are all the separate ideas that each one of us has. So we end up going way off over there.
So it's nuts, right? And then it turns out like you and I are talking and like the entire audience has already just gone off somewhere and had some pizza and just lost interest 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. They're out at the food truck.
But maybe not. Hopefully they'll find it interesting because for me, a lot of that stuff is interesting. A lot of behind the scenes is my thing anyway. So the music is great, songs are great, but like what people were wearing and where they recorded stuff and what label they were on and, you know, what were their band made up of. That's the stuff I love. So that's why I get into that stuff. So we're going to start with, Will, tell us all about your childhood. As a kid, Will, what are the things you remember as a kid that you like think are like part of what became your personality, or what did you think of as a kid? What do you think as a kid made you happy?
What made me happy?
Yeah, when you were little. Like when you were little, what were your memories of childhood that you liked?
I was thinking about this. I'll tell you what I can remember.
Okay.
Because I have very fractional memories throughout my whole life. And I've noticed that it's just weird. It seems like I remember certain things and then other things are just like, what else happened that year? Well, I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else is like that.
I think so. I think we all are as we get older. I do.
So, well, obviously music makes me happy. Bicycles make me happy. Horse snouts make me happy. The snouts on horses. That's because cool. They're like big and pink and soft and you can pet them. You're like, and they're funny. Animals in general make me happy. It's hard to put a finger on it. Just stability of things around me and just peace in general, like in what's going on around me, in my endeavors. I just like to be grounded and focused. I don't know. I don't really know. No one's really even asked me that question
see.
before in my whole life. Like what make you happy as a kid? It's like, I don't know. I just remember being happy most of the time.
Yeah.
You know?
What kind of a
Just-
dynamic was it? Was it like did your parents work all the time? Was your mom home?
Well, we emigrated from England
Mhm.
in like 1969, I think.
Okay. So you were born, wait, in 63?
68. We came over in 68.
When were you born?
I was born in 1965.
65. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was 3.
Yeah.
And they came over because at the time, the industry in America was gigantic.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, everybody was doing, something to do with like mechanics or tool and die or welding or construction. I mean, it was just everything was, like gangbusters,
Mhm.
And my dad had signed up with a company that had promised him like this amount of money, a good work week and all that other stuff. And then basically it ended up being a bunch of bullshit. And after he came over here
Mhm.
and, almost like, I wouldn't say an indentured servant,
Right.
but the company fronted him all the money to get over here. And when they get over here, it's less than desirable working conditions, not as much money as they said it was originally. You still got to pay back this company for the money that you borrowed because you signed a contract.
Right.
You know,
Typical American
so it
shit.
ended up my mom having to go to work. But luckily she had some, secretarial skills,
Mhm.
And she knew shorthand, which was a really big deal back then. And she had to go to work too. So I, grew up like a latchkey kid. I was the youngest of all the siblings. So, I was basically left to my own devices from about first grade on.
Okay. Yep. Wow.
So, you get a good imagination, you get good at being by yourself and,
It's a Gen X way, man.
being independent,
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely. But as far as being able to tell you exactly what makes me happy,
Mhm.
that is, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you what makes me happy now, but
Well,
looking back,
is there anything that makes you happy now that didn't change from when you were a kid, or does it? I mean, it's obviously you're older, but is there anything?
Bicycles, roller skating,
Yeah. So all that's the thing.
music still makes me happy,
Mhm. Yeah.
But as you get older, different things make you happy. Waking up in the morning makes
I know.
me happy.
Yeah, we're starting to get to that age where I'm awake. I lived another
I'm
day.
awake. Yeah, I'm ready to kick some ass. Yeah.
So you were in track and field in like high school, was it?
Yeah, middle school and high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and I played soccer and I rode BMX and I roller skated and
Yeah.
I could, I was in 8th grade. I could do a vertical leap, jump straight up and touch a 10-foot, basketball
Nice.
hoop.
Yep.
Basically just jump straight up in the air. I had like a 40-inch vertical jump or something in 8th grade. It was sick.
Wow.
But I had these big old frog legs. I call them frog legs because I did so much running and so much skating and so much. Oh, I was into skateboarding too. So.
Oh, wow. See, there's another thing I didn't know.
Yeah. So, there was.
Did you think you were Tony Hawk? Were you trying to be, which is way before Tony Hawk? Because Tony Hawk was like
Tony
10 years
Hawk's
later.
a punk, man. Tony Hawk's a punk.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
He's like best skateboarders ever. So.
I know. But like, there was no such thing as Tony Hawk probably at that time.
Well, Tony Hawk was probably still a fetus about then.
That's what I'm saying.
What I mean?
You know what I mean? That came later. I don't know if there was like any kind of like skateboarding pro that was like a big deal 10 years before that, right?
I don't know. We just we didn't really pay attention to that
That's
stuff.
true.
We got the skateboarding. We got the skateboarding collector cards and like the Topps bubble gum packs, just like you do with baseball cards.
True, that's true.
It would show like the original 5, the guys out in California who started it all, and they'd have them doing like their tricks and stuff. And you'd be like, oh, I got that one. Oh, I want this one. So you guys would be trading cards.
The collector thing.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, I never really, I never thought about, but that really was like not our social media, but technically,
yeah,
that was a thing. That was like a major thing at one time. Not that it's not now, because there really are, like, trader cards are still a big deal. They're like a huge conglomerate at this point.
Yeah,
But
I don't really follow that much
yeah, I don't
stuff.
either, but I just know that there are like sports companies and stuff that do trading cards for like pro players and stuff like that. So it's still out there, but not like bubblegum cards like when we were kids, but and so I guess we should start with what is it? You drumming?
Oh,
Should we start? What order is it going in? You became a drummer first and then you started roller skating, or did you start roller skating first?
I always liked bikes, so I work on bikes all the time. I
Mhm.
started roller skating when I was about 12, started working at the skating rink as the DJ slash floor guard when I was 13, because back then the labor laws were different.
Oh yeah.
You could work up to like 15 hours a week or something back then
Yep.
with your parents' approval. So I'd work all weekend.
Yep.
I'd go to school all week, and then starting Friday afternoon for the first session, I would work Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. I'd get all my hours in one weekend. So, but it was that. And then I didn't really start drumming till I moved out to Phoenix when I was about 16, I think.
Okay. So you originally started where you live now, which is Michigan.
Right.
Okay. And then you moved.
Well, England and then Wisconsin for about a year. And then we moved here to this little town in Michigan.
Okay.
So,
and then that was when you moved to Phoenix.
Right. When I was about 16. Yeah. My dad got a job offer out there. So we were relocating.
Okay.
He was going to go out there by himself. And he's just like, hey, you want to go? And I thought, adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So I went.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very eye-opening experience for a little cracker boy from a tiny little cracker-ass town. I can tell you that much.
What? Tell me, what do you mean by that? What were you?
It was just like, you got to think. I was basically, from the time I can remember, going to school.
Right.
It was very undiversified.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say
very white. Yeah.
Very, very saltinish. Yes, it was a mix of, this area was basically founded by, very European people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? A lot of, there was British, Polish, Italian, I think there were even some Czechs in there. But it was just a very, very white-ish town. And me growing up, I think we had three black students in our school who I was very good friends with, because for some reason we clicked. I don't know what it was, but it was my friend Wendell, his cousin Casey, and his sister Jacqueline.
Okay.
And man, I used to go over to their house like every weekend.
Yeah.
And we'd play basketball in the dirt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We had a milk crate with the bottom cut out.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Or basically smashed out with a hammer, because we didn't have a saw. Yep. So we smashed the bottom out with a hammer, and sometimes a ball would get stuck in there, and you'd have to smack it around to get it to come out. But man, we had a blast.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was very, very pasty where I came from.
Yeah.
And I don't mind saying that, because that's exact. I'm a white guy, but I know what pasty is. And it was like.
So when you went to Phoenix, it was definitely.
Big difference. Yeah. Such a melting pot of different cultures and religions and ethnicities. It was a little intimidating, but at the same time, it helped me grow as a person. Yeah. Really, It
was probably kind of cool too, really, a little bit, right?
No, it was cool. It was very cool. It was like, I remember just going to the skating rink the first time, and I was just like, wow. I was like one of only about 30 kids there that were white. And then it was everything else. You know what I mean? There were Latinos and there were blacks and there were Asian people and there were Filipino people. And it was just a crazy melting pot. But it really helped to smash a lot of the
stereotypes
that go along, especially when you grow up in a very small town like I did. It really, really helped open my eyes, and it made me a better person.
Good.
Which I'm always striving for. I can't remember who said that, but it was who was that one chef that was used to go with it? Anthony Bourdain,
Bourdain,
the
one,
guy
yeah.
who died a few years back.
Yep.
And he used to travel all over the world. And he said the one good thing that everyone should do sometime in their lifetime, especially if you want to, kind of kill a lot of the stereotypical things that are in your head, travel.
Right.
Travel is the worst enemy of prejudice.
Small-mindedness and yeah.
Right. Because you can travel 100 miles in one direction.
Yep.
You know this from being a radio DJ.
Yeah.
You travel 100 to 150 miles north, east, west, or south. It's the demographics change, the music changes. You might hear
culture changes, the language. Changes.
It doesn't.
Everything.
You don't have to go as far as you think you need to for that stuff.
Here's
to
the
change.
thing. I mean, the if you want to smash the stereotypes in your head part, how many people actually want to do that? And that's, I guess, where the confusion is for some people. But
they got it in their head because their grandma or their grandpa, taught their parents, and their parents taught them this is the way that it is.
Right.
And blah 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 blah. Absolutely.
Totally
agree. That was a big eye opener for when I moved from here to there.
Yeah.
And and then I met the guys that some of the guys that we first started our first band with, and at least one or two of them I still keep in contact with to this very day. So
that's good.
It was a really good experience. I mean, and we were really, really close at the time to actually signing a record deal with Metallica's first record label, who they signed with. I think that was Metal Blade. I'm trying to remember who it was back then.
I don't know.
But they had a heavy influence in like the Los Angeles, LA area, and all through like Phoenix and stuff, because that's basically in the 80s, Phoenix was the new mecca for a lot of the heavier music that was coming out.
Right.
So,
right.
And I got to ride that wave, and it was awesome.
So what ended up happening? Did you ever tell me what happened with that? Why didn't that happen?
Well, you got to think that this is over a course of about 14 years or so. And, you just, over the course of 14 years, you get into it, when you're 17 or 18 years old. I think it was about 18. I was working, I made the transition from working as a DJ in the skating rinks to working as a DJ in clubs and bars, which was a whole new experience as well.
Yeah.
It was great though. And then playing in the bands, and I think after a while, the grind of it all and the fact, I think I'm happier behind the scenes. I think that's why I did so well as a drummer, because I could be in the party without having to be in the party.
Yeah.
I was in the back.
There's something to be said for that.
Drum set around me, and I didn't have to, I could kind of hide behind stuff.
Yep. But you were also a very crucial part of the arrangement. You were probably the grounding of the band, right? You're the one with the beat.
I'm the guy with the beats.
Yeah, there was an old joke. So I know a million musicians, and if anybody hears this, I apologize, but somebody said to me once, not once, I've heard it a million times, how do you get a drummer off your porch? Your front porch? Pay him for the pizza.
That's good.
It's an old joke. An old drummer joke. It's like, I have a few friends that are drummers, and I've heard that one more than once. And from somebody in the band that was busting their balls, and I just happen to overhear it. How do you pay? How do you? I
like that because you can interchange that with all the members of the band.
You can, but it's used for whatever reason. It was
mostly used at drummers and bass players.
And why? I don't know, but I happen to think drummers are cool, so I've never understood the stigma there. But so you ended up just, instead of saying you wanted to stay with the drums because you wanted to be behind the scenes, you went with the DJ thing.
Well, I was still DJing, while I was, doing this. And again, still exploring everywhere. I had moved from Arizona, I think back here to Michigan for a little bit, and then stayed here for about a year or so. And then from here, I hooked up with another buddy that I went to high school with, and he had a band.
Yeah.
And we headed out to Los Angeles. The whole band, we just one day just decided, well, not decided, we had planned it.
Yeah.
We had bought a big extended van, and we packed everything up in there with what money we had, and we headed out to LA. And I didn't plan very well, because I'm all about the trip and the having the fun part.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan very well. So after about 2 weeks, I was basically out of cash.
Yeah.
And I was like, gotta go.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Arizona and got back into my band again, found a job, blah, blah, blah. But there was a lot of traveling through like the mid 80s to the early 90s. A lot of traveling.
Yeah.
It was just because I was able to do that. I was able to just go, you know what? That sounds like an adventure, and I want to try that.
It's actually
I don't know
cool.
what would happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to be sleeping under a bridge.
You didn't care though, I bet.
I didn't care. I was
I'll
like,
figure it out.
I want to try this.
Yep.
I remember, used to have to ship my drum set Greyhound, because Greyhound back then used to, I think you can still do it. You can ship things via Greyhound.
Right.
So I had to break my whole drum set down, pack all the shells into each other, try to fit them in one big box, get all the hardware, put it in another box, get all my cymbals and everything, put them in another box, wrap them up enough so they wouldn't get destroyed. I mean, it was a whole big ordeal, just to move the damn drums.
Wow.
So it was
actually
it was
pretty
crazy.
interesting that you had to Greyhound. I didn't really.
I mean,
I honestly,
that's how bad I wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did the drumming thing fall off to the wayside?
I think about 92, 93, maybe. I had moved from Arizona to Florida because I actually had family in Florida. My mother and father lived in Florida. So they helped me get reestablished and got into my own place a couple of weeks after we got down, got the bearings down and everything. I was then with my girlfriend at the time. She decided to move out with me. And, things didn't work out there, but she stayed in Florida for quite a while, I think. And was dating another guy, really nice dude. But at about 91, I started working for a place in Bradenton, Florida called J.D. Penguins.
Oh, wow. That's it for part 1 of this 3-part interview with Will Kidd. In the meantime, check us out, www.lanaaanddave.com. That's where all of our podcast platforms are. That's where all of our social media is. And we will bring you part 2 very soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Hey, you just listened to Love and Life with Lana and Dave. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share the podcast, leave us a comment or a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'll see you soon.